time of the day.
All right, you guys are good to go.
Thank you.
Okay, project approvals, change order number 1. Brian,
Okay, we got a change order for Howell and Quail. And this item is for the foundation that we ran into along Howell Avenue when we were doing the directional boring in front of MATC. Something we were unaware of and contractor ran into, so worked out a deal.
Brian, did you say Howell and Quail?
That's the project.
Oh, okay.
There was a portion that was on Howell and a portion on Quail. So that's just how the project was identified.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
This change order is for work that was done along Howell in front of MATC.
Okay. All right.
That water main.
I was very confused because it didn't have a title on where this change order would apply to. So.
Yep.
any concerns on that one?
Nope.
Get a motion?
Seifert moves to approve the project 17103.
Willie seconds.
Okay, we have a first and a second on that issue. Roll call.
Seifert, aye.
Willie, aye.
Gail, aye.
Sigali, aye.
Richards, aye. Okay, proposed utility commission functional change.
So under this one in the city's strategic action plan, there are two items that this relates to. One is to enact better alignment between the city and utility and eliminate resource overlap. The second piece is to evaluate and revise the city organizational chart structure, including committee structure. And with that, the beginnings of an analysis were started in which the city administrator is recommending that the commission be rolled over into or be eliminated in favor of a Board of Public Works. And then that would be combined with Traffic and Safety and CIP Committee, moving forward with looks like 3 aldermen and maybe up to 2 citizen representatives on the board.
Well, I'd like to start off by saying, as I always do, old advice, always the best. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, or don't try and fix it. And the biggest problem is when you try and fix something that ain't broke, quite frequently you create more problems than what you think you're going to fix, if you think you're going to fix something. And I see this as that kind of an operation. What we have is a system that's been developed over more than the 35 years that I've just been here. And I've lived through the same kind of things. And I don't wish to see them done again to anyone else. The second thing that I think is very important is it's way, way, way past time that the city recognize that this is not a city department. It is not like any other city department. We are a business. We make a product. We sell a product. We sell the service. We don't take any money from the city. No other department can say that. We have our own budget, which, if you look at the annual report, is very large. We pay taxes to the city. No other department does that. We are very different in how we have to run. We also have different regulations because we have to answer to the DNR and the PSC. So we are very different from any other department. And there is no reason why we should be always saying, well, you got to do it just like the other departments do. I can understand the desire for a common employee manual. And as long as they accept the fact that we need some exceptions to it, because not only the things I've mentioned, we operate differently. because we have operators who have to be on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Holidays, no exceptions. Everybody wants their water. So we are very different. I also am extremely disappointed that the people who started this didn't have the intelligence to know that if you want to develop some improvements, the best place to go is the people who are doing the work. And so far as I can see, no one from, at least from our side, was involved in being asked, well, what can we do to improve? Which tells me that the people who did this aren't, even I am not aware of all of the things that are being done at the worker level. A lot of the lack of communication is up at, I hate to say it, friends, our level and the management level at the city are not aware of all the things that are being done cooperatively at the worker level. Our people have always worked well, and the city people have always worked well with us. I mean, you might go in and find a city vehicle on our rack or one of ours on theirs. The city knows what our sewer cleaner can do. And yeah, it's a big vacuum cleaner, and they can use it too, and it has been used. So I think we're beating at something, and Mike has listed very well in his analysis all the things that are being done and why they are being done. So I'm sorry to get up on my soapbox, but this has infuriated me. And I've lost a lot of sleep over it, and I'm tired of it. The last time we faced this kind of thing where the council was going to take over, we wound up with a union. That cost us a lot of frustration, a lot of money. That could happen again, even though the union would not have the power. It could happen. It is certainly, it's already started to happen, that it's going to cost us people. There are no people working at that plant because we have been very careful to get the good people. They all could walk. They all could go someplace. And it wouldn't take very many of them, maybe only one, to make it very difficult to keep the operations at the level we have kept them at. We worked very hard to build a award-winning, probably the best utility, at least in our state. And I don't think we should give up anything that would disturb that. It appears to me that the only benefit of this is that we can scratch somebody's ego and make him feel a little bit better among his friends. And I think that's a sad reason for doing this.
I agree with Jerry. I think the utility's been a good example of how utilities should be run. And we've been very successful over the last 40 years plus. And I just think we're making another mistake. We don't have a system that's broke or not functioning properly. So all of a sudden now we got to make a change. I agree that it's nice to have somebody overseeing it from the city, but I'm just kind of with Jerry. I'm a little upset. I also have a question about what about the taxes that we collect and give to the city, which is roughly $1 million a year. And also what about the money we have in escrow? So those are a couple of questions I'm a little concerned about. I'll leave it up to you now, Mike.
I also would point out something that easily is forgotten because it's back in even ancient history for me, that we bought this utility. We paid for it from the city. We paid regularly and handsomely for what the city said this utility was worth when we bought it. We obviously, we pay taxes now on all the capital that we own. So that makes us extremely different. I think if the city wants it back, they owe the utility a lot of money. Yeah, you laugh, Dale. Yeah, you've been on the other side. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, we made some handsome payments and they weren't always easy.
Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a hard one, you know, coming into this without the history. I guess when I was brought on to the board, you know, I kind of looked at it that the utility was different from the rest of the city from the standpoint that, you know, everything that is done based on money collected from users. It's ratepayers. It's not tax base. And I look at the rest of the city departments and they're all, you know, everything that is done is a piece of the tax base. They've all got a budget that comes from the taxpayers. And I guess I always looked at us differently from that standpoint. You know, I understand, you know, the trying to come up with one standardized personnel manual. I think, you know, at the end of the day, yes, they're all city employees. They should all have to, you know, abide by the same requirements, whatever that is in the policy manual. With that said, I think there's also the thought process of, again, they are city employees and, you know, should there be one set of, you know, the salary ranges where it doesn't matter if the guy is working for the DPW, the utility, the police department, whatever it is, it's all, you know, it's all figured out that way. From an accounting standpoint, I agree with Mike. I think it's two totally different systems between what the city has to abide by and what we have to abide by with the PSC regulations. I think that could be a disaster to bring those two together. So, you know, I think there's places where, yes, it makes sense that changes have to be made on both sides, but I don't agree that, you know, the commission should be pulled completely and the utility just made into a, you know, quote unquote department of the city, even though, I mean, technically it is. I think there's enough difference there from everything else that's going on at the city that there needs to be some independence with some changes.
Bob points out another reason we are different than other departments. The city departments all are, and the Common Council are responsible to the taxpayers. That's one group of people. If you draw a Venn diagram, that's a circle. We are responsible to the ratepayers. That's not the same group. There are some people who are ratepayers who are not taxpayers, and there are some that are in the group. They're intersecting circles, but they are different. And our first responsibility is always to the ratepayers. And in some cases, it's not far from, but it doesn't always agree with what's best for the taxpayers.
Ken, what do you think?
Well, you know, this is not a new issue. Obviously, this is second time around on this since I've been part of the commission. And it's the second administrator in a row that's, you know, taking a look at this kind of big picture and thought that culturally and from an alignment standpoint, there's a better way to do this for the city and our residents. So I continue to, and I still feel that way, that the way it currently structured and the way it currently operates, there's a better way to do business to make sure it's working best on behalf of our residents. You know, there's valid points on the accounting side of the business and the ratepayer stuff. I think those can be addressed very adequately, and whatever solution is determined when all is said and done through discussion of the common council or whatever. But I think overall the alignment in philosophical and cultural kind of divergences really is what has grown over time to really kind of be an impediment to the best practices for the community. I just as an observer for 11 years, and that has really kind of struck me as the primary driver to make it seem as though that operationally and philosophically we can do this better. And I think that's where I'll continue to focus on. So.
Well, I still, if you want to do something like this, then the proper way to do it is to get the people involved in working on it. Particularly the people know about the work that needs to be done. The people, obviously, they didn't consider all the things that Mike put in his answer. None of those would have had to be brought up had he been involved in
Jerry,
day one.
Don't speak to stuff you don't know about. So just be careful about that.
And I think the guy that unfortunately wrote the proposal was the one who knew the least about the history and what was there. Probably be a good idea if we recommended that he did come to the meetings, and if he feels he's not connected, and I can't see how that can be, Ken, with you here.
Well,
I mean,
just with you citing that you talking just as you're talking, that is the city administrator, that is the chief operating officer of the city, and you denigrating his opinion and his view on the overall. He runs the city. Not only the utility, he runs the city. And the fact that you sit there and continue to talk like that, as he's an uninformed bystander, I think that's indicative of the entire cultural and philosophical problem we're facing here, and what has led to this discussion once again. It's unbelievable.
Well, let's just agree that there are different opinions on this particular issue. But clearly from what I read out of the memo from Andrew is that the council has already approved, the administrator to charge forward with this in regards to their strategic action plan.
Well, Dale, no, just make sure the council and the adoption of the strategic action plan is mandated as a primary task of the administrator to examine the structure of the organization and make sure it's right-sized and best aligned for the community. So they're not necessarily to restructure it, to look at it and make recommendations. So, I mean, that is not a preordained thing. So it's just want to clarify that. So.
Well, let's put it this way. I think there's one thing that's on the table that probably needs to get resolved under any scenario, is that if there are disagreements or differences of opinion, say whether it's accounting software or engineering or pay structures, it's still along the lines of that those issues would need to get resolved even if everything changed here. So it's like, would it be in everybody's best interest that there was a subcommittee between the city and the utility that put together, worked out, or at least defined those differences, and then what needed to be done to rectify them? And then after that was said and done, then they can turn around and make a decision as to, charge forward or take a step back. But if you got some problems and some differences, they're going to need to get worked out one way or another under any differences of government.
I agree with you, Dale.
It kind of goes back to what Jerry's saying, is that, you know, these issues and like you said, Ken, they have been here for a long time, and they've been here for a lot longer than 11 years. There's always been this differences of opinion on, you know, this policy and that policy and how things are handled. But I think they need to be identified, defined, put on a table, and a subcommittee between the utility and the city sit down and negotiate those issues out.
I think one good example of that, Dale, for what you're saying is the problems we had with the payroll system. And you know, suggestion was made, well, why do we have two payroll systems? So the two sides got together, not the commission and not the council, the two people involved, the finance people. And they determined that it would actually cost more to put it all in one system, because the city would have to train people in two systems instead of one. Possibility for confusion with working in two systems instead of one. They would need different programs to do the job, or they would need to completely modify theirs, all very costly systems. So they came up with a better solution. So we have two systems, but are they costing any more? We didn't add anything. They didn't add anything. We know what we're doing. They know what we're doing, but they don't have to operate the system. It worked out better for both people to have the two systems. Now you can look at that and say, well, why should we have two systems? Well, we know why we should. It's been looked at. So I think what Dale is suggesting is exactly, if it's still a problem, let's get together and talk about it and work it out. But that doesn't mean you have to rebuild the whole system and screw up a lot of other things and make a lot of other people unhappy. Because, you know, as was brought up, there is a potential here to lose one of our most employees already, and we haven't even started. And let me tell you, that loss will be one of the biggest losses we've ever experienced here.
I'm not going to be held hostage by some employee's threat to leave, to be perfectly honest. Everyone is, if you, and Jerry, you've seen in your lifetime, I'm sure that everyone is replaceable. So I'm not being held hostage to any for the fact that from that standpoint, I really, from an alignment standpoint, I'm not sure where their responsibilities would change to begin with. If they're that uncomfortable, I guess they need to decide with themselves what they need to do. So I'm not gonna be held hostage to that. But you know, I just think in the big picture, I mean, the administrator and the staff have taken, you know, years to examine this, and then the prior administration had examined this for years. This is not a new phenomenon. This is not a new thought process that you know, the structure as the utility as an island here unto itself, leave us alone and be damned with you, is really at the root of the problem. And I think the administration's research and philosophy on this is well borne out and well researched, and it'll be up to, you know, discussion with the Common Council, you know, how they see things in terms of the betterment of the city. So that's where I'll leave it for now.
Well, I won't say that the city can't stand improvement in some areas, but they're doing a pretty damn good job. And I would say that our policies and procedures have stood the test of time. We have the awards to prove it. And anytime you turn on the faucet, you better believe it's the best water you can buy.
Ken, one of the things you said was, you know, there was impediment to best practices. Can you expand on that for me? What you're thinking there, or what the thought process of either the administrator or the council is on that? What are the impediments? You're muted.
There we go. Wrong button. I think if you can actually put a, thumb on anything other than kind of just the way and the thought process in terms of how business is done, how it's integrated, the thought process, kind of control. We've seen in the past, prior administrations had definitely had angst with development issues and proposals that maybe the water utility had a different way of looking at business, and they're forced to it for certain reasons because of the regulatory environment. I think it's just the lone wolf approach to life. When it's a piece of the organization, it's a piece of the city government, and it's just philosophically and operationally, it's just unfortunately geographically, because it's a standalone in two different sites. It's just a standalone that it just has built a wall or a moat, and I just don't think it operates as effectively and efficiently as it should be.
Well, I think Dale made a good point when he said we need to list all the differences and sit down and discuss them and see what we can do. So just come out with a broad statement that we're going to make change and not include the people that are really involved, I think it makes a difference. So at least that's the way I feel right now.
Personally speaking, people, I think some of the root cause of this is the fact that the utility does, run from a remote location. I have always felt that way, that I thought the utility ought to be, in my opinion, part of City Hall. It creates strains on communication. There's a lack of understanding on both parties because of the remoteness. The same thing holds true with, the building you guys occupy. There's no reason why that needs to be a separate building. Staff should be part of City Hall. Distribution ought to be part of the highway department. Sell the damn building. I think that would go a long way to strengthen the bonds between the two different groups. And with that, you could hear a pin drop.
Well, Dale, that's what I said. I think the remoteness and the separateness is a issue, and it always has been. But
I think there's probably good reasons for some of the things the utility has done differently than City Hall. And I'm sure it's because of the regulatory issues of the job. And from that standpoint, I don't think the utility quite understands what the city does, and the city doesn't quite understand what the utility's got to go through. But the only way to make that more uniform so that everybody understands what the other person's doing is that if they were tied to the hip, They have to be together. You can't operate out of a remote location. It doesn't work. So I think that's one big issue in my opinion, and always has been. Other than that, I think the utility is an outstanding organization. It's clearly recognized by the peer group in the state and in the country, and its leadership and its financial issues. The city, I should say, the utility had better bond ratings than the city for many years. I don't know how it is now.
They're identical now.
Well, and there's good reasons for those bond ratings on some of these issues on both sides. The city's was pretty horrible way back when.
Was that your fault, Dale? Come on now. You were the cut up the credit card guy, right? You fixed that, and that was a philosophical change. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that the city really came a long way, and they actually had a struggle to get to the same level that the utility was already at.
Mhm. Well, I think.
Clearly there's differences of opinion on how these issues need to get resolved. And that's why I'm just thinking, no matter what, they still need to be identified, put on the table, and try to get resolved. So how do we go forward with this?
Pick it up and hang it up if it's nothing.
Mike, did you receive any response to the email you sent?
No, he's not.
No, I have not.
Around the corner.
Well,
Dale, just remember too, it's
Appointment on
I
Thursday.
think we're, the recommendation is not the dissolution necessarily of the water utility. I mean, there's a new format for governance really is what the recommendation is.
I don't have to, I know about it.
So that's, there's a committee structure being contemplated that not only serves as oversight for the water utility, but as, Board of Public Works to manage the capital of the city. So, I mean, there's a well-aligned kind of actually goals from a structure standpoint. So those are obviously, fairly important roles from a committee standpoint and a governance standpoint. So those would kind of, I think, mirror the expertise that is on the current commission stature and our current commission structure with the water utility. So I think thought process that way. It's certainly not handing it over to a bunch of rookies to wheel and deal as they see fit.
oh, no argument there. Clearly, there's going to be some synergies by doing that. And that's what I'm saying here is that, Andrew put together one list of things. Mike turned around and responded with a few others. And those differences under any scenario, whether organizationally it changes or not, should get resolved is all I'm saying. So to try and move forward with this, I think it would be in everybody's best interest if those issues were somehow addressed at a subcommittee level between Mike and the city administrator, and then proceed from there.
I also feel that they should include the commission, at least let them know what is happening and what's going on, and get their opinion on those ideas. Right now, it's been kind of vague and it's tossed out there, and we really don't have a full handling of it. So we need to work with the city, but I think also the commission should be at least included on what's happening.
no disagreement, Fred. The same thing holds true for common council. Common council doesn't have a feel for what we do at the utility. I mean, they're totally in the dark. So,
Well,
I
we're
would not
not-
say that, Dale. I mean, I wouldn't go do carte blanche where there's a complete level of ignorance over what's, I mean, every council member's been on the council for at least 2 terms now, so.
when's the
So
last,
it's,
when's the last time you saw a common council member at the water utility meeting?
they don't have to be at the water, I mean, just like not every common council member is at the planning commission. It's,
I agree,
So-
but that's what I'm saying is the commonality. People don't have a strong feel for what goes on.
well, I mean, the administrator's role is to facilitate the understanding and
Agreed.
and I don't necessarily view that the folks in the common council think they're underinformed.
Well, I think,
I mean, we only meet once a month, for God's sakes. I mean, so it isn't like we're intimately involved in day-to-day business either at the water utility. So even though all of us have been here a long time, we're not contemplating day-to-day decisions, each of us either. So it's, I think it's more operation and philosophical and governance that the common council has to kind of determine its, where it is. They don't need to know the nuts and bolts of why we decided to do or get rid of a lift station on Jewel Avenue. It's just,
I wholeheartedly agree, Ken. All I'm suggesting is that if this little subcommittee gets together, there should be somebody from common council on there and maybe from commission as well.
well, I mean, we can talk all about a subcommittee, but
Oh, that's,
I mean, that may be an idea that the administrator is willing and want to consider with as this process kind of unfolds. But ultimately, it's a common council decision making when all is said and done. Whenever
exactly. That's
so,
common council's directive. All we can do is provide some input, but we don't have any decision making in that at all. So all I'm trying to do is provide some suggestions before they make their decision.
yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. I mean, it's the evolutionary process. I mean, this is the first official kind of public facing explanations of what folks think. So, well, I'll trust the administrator to manage that process and move forward as he sees fit, and the common council will do as it sees fit eventually. So,
Yeah, I agree. So have we beat this enough?
Yeah, I think we beat this, and I think we should turn it over to Mike now to work with the city administrator and try to see if we can work something out together and get a better handle and understanding. Otherwise, we can be talking for another 2 or 3 days on this subject. Everybody's got an opinion and they think that it should be this way or that way. So why don't we turn it over to Mike and the city administrator and then see if we can get some agreement with both the council and the utility commission.
But understand this, it's common council's prerogative to do anything they want. This is their responsibility. They have delegated us the authority to do these things, and they can withdraw that at any time they so desire.
I agree, Dale, but a number of them, I don't think are totally informed of what really takes place at the utility. A few of them do, but not all of them.
And that's the nature of the beast, Fred. I think that's what Ken was trying to point out.
I mean,
I think we should move on, gentlemen, and take the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, I was just saying that. I mean, it's a part-time council, part-time mayor. I mean, you have full-time, you have a full-time administrator for a reason. So, I mean, we're going to trust the administrator's guidance because that's what we pay him for. And if there's an evolution in this thought process, then we'll certainly entertain that. So,
Amen.
But you do need to recognize his scope of knowledge.
Jerry, you should really stop with that approach to, he may look youthful to you or whatever. I'm not sure what you're attempting to do there. Well, I have my idea what you're attempting to do there, but he is a well-seasoned kicking ass administrator, and he deserves every penny we pay him. So I'd be very careful how you continue to phrase these things. It really serves no good purpose.
All right, personnel.
All I'm saying, Ken, is when I want my car fixed, I don't call a refrigerator repairman.
Personnel
My
policy.
point exactly. That's what needs to stop.
Okay, people, we're moving on. Personnel policy manual. Michael,
Yeah, so the city created a new personnel policy manual. They've been working on this for quite some time, sort of on and off. And they put it together. The Common Council approved it, I think, in July sometime, made it effective August 1st. Made it very clear that it was to apply to all employees. That was, in fact, even in the motion. It's in the book several times. To me, I think we clearly know what the council's intention was, that it applies to utility employees as well. I think there's a bit of confusion. We do have our own personnel manual, a bit of confusion as to whether that should be there, shouldn't be there, whatever the case is. I think it's appropriate to adopt this manual as written, understanding that there's going to be some carve outs or some addendum that's got to cover some utility specific items in here as well. But at least this then is the same manual used for all city employees as well as all utility employees. And there are a few changes in the manual compared to previous versions. Some of the things that were added, funeral leave was officially added back. It's actually more generous than what was there in years past. They've added, as it applies to the utility, it would be added tuition reimbursement. We only covered up to $4,500 over a 3-year period. The city covers 100% of a bachelor's degree, and I think 75% of a master's degree. Bachelor's and associate's degree, and then master's degree with a 5-year look back window. There was child rearing leave or parenting leave that was added. There's a few things that are going to affect us going forward. One of them is the treatment of a holiday bank. Our treatment plant operators have a holiday bank and use that because they're obviously on shift. The manual says that there's no payout of that holiday bank. In our case, there needs to be. There's times that our operators, due to scheduling, can't use all their holidays, and so we have routinely paid that out. It doesn't happen very often, but we need to have the ability for it to happen. There's some overtime things that need to be worked on, but by and large, again, it's one manual for the city and the utility. There's an awful lot. I shouldn't say an awful lot. There's a fair amount that still needs to be worked on through this. It was put together, it was presented, it was adopted, and there are a number of wrinkles that we just need to work through. But by and large, it's the manual itself is what we're looking for adoption at this point.
wasn't the utilities policy manual originated from the city's personnel policy manual?
It actually was a bit the other way around. The utility created a personnel manual many years ago when it started, actually before the union started, when it started seeing the need to define some of these things. And then the city, it took it and ran it from there. And so we've each had kind of a parallel version for a number of years, largely driven out of the union contracts. But after 2012, those union contracts were effectively rewritten into two separate manuals, one for the city folks and one for the utility folks.
Yeah, Dale, they've been working on a policy manual rewrite since the first human resource director was hired, probably in 2013 or something. That was one of Scaffidi's first initiatives to hire a HR person. So, I mean, they've been working on this for a long time to actually finally get an all-encompassing manual update. And I think the economics of the benefits that were actually extended are very attractive to the employees. So, especially with the funeral leave, I know that created a lot of angst with the funeral leave back when the PTO was converted. I think the parental leave, the 80 hours of extra parental leave is very generous. I think the whole goal was to speak to not necessarily, it speaks to current employees, but it also speaks to employees that will be coming in the years ahead that value some of these things a little differently than maybe older employees do. So.
Well, my recollection is that both sides have had a policy manual going back well more than 20 years ago. So the differences of opinion on how things have varied between the two has been the policies of the body, whether it's Common Council or the Utility Commission. So it's about time that we get them singing out of the same hymn book. So I think from that standpoint, I would entertain a motion to approve this change in a personnel policy manual.
Willie so moves.
Gil, second.
Roll call.
Willie, aye.
Gil, aye.
Sigali, aye.
Fred?
I said aye.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Richard's aye. Professional services contract with Rambo.
That would be me. This is pertaining to the Canal Beezer property, and the city, along with Larry Haskin, have requested that with the review of all the documents of the DNR and the soil rehab that they have to do out there with the contamination, that we have Rambo look at those documents to make sure that the utility is protected and future uses of that corridor are protected with whatever DNR requires of the cleanup of the Canal Beezer property. So this is for a contract not to exceed $15,000 with Rambo to review the documents that Canal and Beezer are preparing for the DNR for their ultimate closure of that property.
Brian, just to clarify, I know Larry is still actively involved in overall. Melissa was the contact here, or was it Larry?
No, this was with Larry. Larry's the one that reached out about this.
Okay, so Andrew's indicated that we actually reached out. So Melissa's reviewed this and we're good from that standpoint?
Absolutely. This was all part of our lakefront meetings that we have with the city.
Okay, you said Larry, I just wanted to make sure that the city attorney was here too. So Larry doesn't have an official capacity with us anymore, so.
Yes.
All right.
Well, I think the concern here, people, Mike, if I'm not mistaken, many years ago, we had some testing done and some wells dug or whatever, because we were concerned that some of the contamination was crossing Fifth Avenue and flowing into the city property, if I recall that correctly. So whatever it takes, my first concern here is that this is gonna exceed $15,000. Why? Because I assume we're gonna have significant amount of contamination here that might be moving across property lines that was some of the concerns from way back when. And, reading this report, I'm just pleasantly surprised to finally see that it's out of Wabash's ownership, because at one point in time, we tried to buy that property. And Wabash just as soon sat on it, so that, had it been inoperative, that it'd be easier and cheaper for them to pay the taxes on it than pay for the cleanup. So I think, the city's gonna have to keep a strong eye on this one and the water utility, because there's been a lot of issues with the contamination in this property, Ken. And Larry's, I'm sure, if Haskins involved with this, I'm sure he remembers those issues.
Yeah, I mean, I even recall stuff when I was digging trenches and stuff there that they ran into who knows what and expose folks to stuff. So,
Okay,
Just clarification, that's what we're trying to make sure we have a handle on. The raw water
Yeah.
line is what we ran into through this contamination when that was installed. We want to make sure that that's protected. So whatever requirements the DNR puts on this site, that we can still access our lines and access that corridor in the future.
is it just the DNR, or was the EPA, the 5th district, tied up in that property as well?
I'm not aware of the EPA being involved with it. I know the DNR is definitely involved.
Yeah, back when we exposed the contamination, it was just the DNR.
Well, that's a plus. All right, get a motion on this one.
Seifert moves to approve the agreement with Ramble for the support service.
Gil
Sagali
second.
second.
Sorry. Yeah, go for it, Bob. Yeah.
Sagali.
Yeah.
Roll call.
Gil, aye.
Sagali, aye.
Seifert, aye. Hello?
Jerry, we got you out there. Jerry, did you vote?
Willie, I. I'm sorry. I'm having sound problems.
Okay.
Richard's aye. Okay. Progress payment.
So this is a final payment for the Howell and Quail Run looping projects. This is including the change order that was approved previously. We're looking at closing this project out, $27,374 for a payment here.
Willie moves approval.
Seifert seconds.
Gil, aye.
Sagali,
Roll
aye.
call.
Seifert, aye.
Willie, I.
Bob, did we get
Sagali, aye
you?
again. Yeah, I'm good.
Richard's aye. Jewel Street.
Jewel Street, this is a little payment this month. This is the Jewel Sanitary Sewer Project, and we're looking at a progress payment of $80,000.64 and some change. We are over the $1 million mark on this project.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question. It's just not necessarily with the progress payment. Their road signage down there, are they getting close to getting that out of the road, or they just forgot about it for the time being, or are they still working there?
No, they are still working there. So
Okay,
they've got
all right.
they've got the line across the road. Now they're in the process of testing all that line. They're pouring the benches, the bottoms of the manholes. And then
Okay.
they got to come back and do a liner on the inside of those manholes.
Oh, okay. So they got some stuff way to go then. Okay.
Yeah. So once all that's done, that's going to hopefully take care of this month. Once that's done, then they got to make that final connection of the existing sewer line into the new gravity line on the south side of Jewel. Then they'll be able to start cleaning that area up down there and take care of the road signage and
Okay.
start abandoning the lift station. So
All right,
about
cool.
another month of that hanging out there.
All right.
Get a motion on that one?
Seifert moves to
Sigali move to
approve.
approve.
Seifert seconds.
Who made the motion?
Stigali made the first.
Okay, and then Seifert seconded. Roll call.
Billy,
Seifert,
aye.
aye.
Gail, aye.
Sigali, aye.
Richards, aye. Vouchers.
I'm a little concerned. I didn't see anything in the vouchers for Bill on the camera this man. I just hope you guys are taking good care of it.
Oh, you missed it, Jerry. There was one for about $2 for some fastener for the camera or something. Maybe it was a quarter.
It's still working fine, Jerry.
Good.
Yeah, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Get a motion on vouchers?
Move to approve.
To approve the vouchers.
Willie seconds.
Roll call.
Seifert, aye.
Willie, aye.
Gail, aye.
Sigali, aye.
Richards, aye. Investments.
So for July, we had deposits of 1,300,000, withdrawals of 1,200,000. We had 3 payrolls of 300,000, a transfer out of the BMO investment account into the checking account of 184,000, interest of about 3,000, BMO net earnings on the investment of 9,400, and a change in the market value of a negative 6,500. The LGIP rate is at 0.14. Vouchers reported for June were 1.2 million, which pretty closely matches our withdrawal amount. And the remaining committed to 2020 capital budget project amounts, the water amount went down a little bit by about 50,000. The sewer amount went down by about 70,000. We had a big sewer payment last month that cleared and dropped that amount down. So that's it for investments.
Any concerns?
Annette, have you been in communication with our folks at BMO? How they have any philosophy how they're gonna approach life for the next
I have
year and a
not
half or
been
2 years that the Fed has indicated they're gonna be on the sidelines, or?
I have not been in any communication. You know, the last thing that we worked out with them was that we were depleting the account. So no, I have not touched base with them again.
Okay, it might be handy to just get even a written kind of how they're approaching life right now, because obviously 0.14 is risk-free, but it's meaningless in the big picture. So,
Sure.
but you don't necessarily want to do something stupid and expose yourself to a lot of market risk on things either. So
Sure. I can
just pick their
ask
brain
them.
and see what they're thinking here in terms of how they position their portfolio versus what the philosophy of the Fed is currently. So.
Okay.
Ken, we got your mug shot. We can see you.
What's that? You couldn't see me before?
No. Now
No.
we see you, or at least on mine.
Oh, you did something different, because now you're like big Larry Santa Claus covering the whole screen.
Okay. Did we need approval on anything on financial statements? No? Or I mean,
Well,
investments?
that's just the investment report. I didn't review the financial report yet, the financial statements.
Okay.
And I don't think there's anything to make a motion on. It's just for your review. So everybody has the quarterly financials in front of them. This is through June 30th. So this is 6 months into the year. The first column is our actual numbers for 2020 through June compared to the annual budget for the full year. And then we have a percentage of that budget, which should be about 50% since we're halfway through the year. And we also have a column for last year through June 30th, actual numbers. So we can compare this year to last year. And the variance in that last column shows that comparison. So just pointing out highlights here, revenues are up for water, and that's because usage is up a little bit. We have not been charging any of our customers late penalties. And the credit card fees are being incurred by us as well. These are PSC rules during the COVID virus. Late penalties will be reinstated starting on September 20th with those bills that are due. The credit card fees will take back probably beginning of next year. I'm hearing somebody else. I don't know who that, I don't know if you guys can hear somebody else speaking or not, but.
That could be my wife in the back.
Oh, okay. Okay. Tower rental revenues are up a little bit for 2020. We always have amended leases that take effect sometimes in future years. Hydrant permits are down a little bit. So looking at the expenses, obviously here the biggest difference between this year and last year is the transmission and distribution expense account. You can see that 160,000, that is additional expense this year compared to last year. We had a lot more main breaks in 2020 in the first half of the year than last year. So in 2019, we had, let's see, one 24-inch break, one 20-inch and three 12-inch and two 8-inch. I'm sorry, that's in 2020. In 2020, we had a 24-inch, 20-inch, three 12-inches, two 8-inches. And in 2019, we had two 12-inches and two 6-inch breaks. So a lot more breaks, bigger breaks, that's causing that expense to be a lot higher for this year. The other ones, and that's just a highlight. Oh, does somebody have a question?
With the moon and the stars not being aligned, either that and that I would be blaming Darren.
I am blaming Darren.
I'm blaming Doug. I don't know what Doug was doing to massage the system, but I haven't got that touch yet.
That's true. As soon as Doug left, this all happened. You're right, Darren. Other things to point out, the admin and general account, you see at the 70,000 higher expense last year compared to this year. And that's because last year we still had PSC and Boardman Clark expenses for trying to fight that construction authorization. This year we don't have any of that. So those are the highlights for expenses, I would say. Interest and investment income, you can see, is way down compared to last year by 170,000. So when you look at the totals, for the first half of the year, our operating income is still over $1 million. And if you include our non-operating income and expenses, we're at about 970,000 for the first half of the year. If you compare that to last year, we're at about 80,000 less than last year, but we're at 55.48% of the budget. So we're doing fine. Sewer utility, the service charge, the revenues are up, and that's because metro rates are up 3.1% for 2020. And our collection volume is also slightly higher by about 1%. And again, we're not collecting any late fees from our customers during the COVID virus for sewer as well. And so offsetting, because the metro rates are a pass-through, so even though the revenue is higher, the expense is also higher for the portion of the metro. That's that negative 62,000 in that last column there for under the expense line items for sewer user charges. So that's our biggest expense difference. Again, the interest and investment income is quite a bit lower than last year by about 44,000. So looking at where we're at for first half of the year for sewer, our total change in net position is a positive 83,000 compared to the budget. We're at 61.44%. But if you compare that to last year, we're just down by about 13,000. So sewer's still hanging on. I know we're watching our operating income, but it's been hovering right above zero for a long time. And it still is. So it's doing just fine.
So the
Any other
biggest differences that I've seen is just, it seems like it's on interest income is probably the biggie.
Yep.
Other than that,
Definitely.
it looks like we're running pretty much status quo.
Yep. That's correct.
Any concerns, you guys?
No, it's good from my standpoint. I think I was wondering about the variance on the transmission and distribution, but the breakage history is useful to know.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, that's Darren. Okay. With that, Ken, Aldermanic report.
Yeah, we took the first meeting off in August. There really has not been a lot of important stuff going on. Obviously, the things that are in work, continuing to work along the freeways, maintenance, get their installation of infrastructure continues there. Mod Homes, I saw they're down on South Hall Avenue. Infrastructure continues to go in place. Roads are being laid as we speak. So from that standpoint, other than ongoing stuff, there really is nothing standing out in my mind over the last few weeks from a council standpoint.
Any thoughts on when Amazon's gonna finally pop open? I mean, all the roads.
Yeah, I talked to Andrew about that last week because they had initially said they wanted to get open late July, but I think we've had a lack of communication from them lately on that front. So I don't have any update for you there.
I see a lot more cars parked there now, and road improvements really look very good. There's no
Yeah,
issue.
I did have one call and someone finally realized how many stoplights are between the police station and the freeway nowadays. So it's, be interesting when they're finally operational. But yeah, there's a lot of poles sticking out of the ground.
Well, it's getting there. Okay, administrative operations.
Okay, so usually in July is when I like to give you an update on how many of our customers are using different types of services that we offer for payment types. So to give you an idea, we do offer ACH payments, and we have 1,293 customers currently registered for that program. And that represents 13.47% of all of our utility customers. So that number has increased a little from the past 2 years. We did recently send out an insert in the bills to try to get more people signed up for this service. It is a free service to the customer, and it's a very easy type of payment method for us. It's one file that we bring in, and all the accounts are uploaded. All the payments are uploaded to the customer account immediately. So it's a really great payment method. The second one that we offer is through PSN, which is our credit card and online billing services. So as of July 30th, we have 2,841 customers registered for that. And that represents almost 30% of our customer base. And of that amount, 1,018 have opted out of receiving paper bills. So we're saving all that money on having to send paper bills and postage to that group of customers. And comparing that to previous years, that number has also grown. So we're at 2,841 right now. We were at 2,425 last year and 2,119 in 2018. And of the ones, so 1,018 have opted out right now of receiving paper bills, and that's compared to 875 at this time last year. So those numbers are growing. We're happy to see that. Payments are being made using these alternate methods that we have available. So that's all good. We added 9 customers for the month. We billed 912 water customers and 938 sewer customers in July. And our gallons billed is up 2.9% compared to last year and 3.1 compared to a 5-year average. And you can see that there is some fluctuation within the groups, but that's an overall increase. The wholesale group is up quite a bit, while the industrial is down. So new customers, we have 50 new customers through the end of July for 2020, and they're all listed for you on that second page.
Annette, this, you know, the way we're handling billing and, you know, clearly the data suggests that the PSNs is going in the right direction. That really looks fantastic. Is that also a variance between the utility and the city for the accounting software?
That is not accounting software. That is a third-party service. I don't know who the city uses to collect credit card payments. I'm not even sure who they use. But this is, PSN is an agency that works out of Madison very closely with Baker Tilly and Civic Systems. So they are very familiar with PSC rules. So for example, when we had to, suddenly the PSC passed an order where we had to eat the cost of the credit card fees instead of passing them on to the customer.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we went to the PSC, we got an order for that, right, for our utilities. So we have a tariff, a temporary tariff for that. And PSN was on that right away because they already knew about it and they were able to make that change for us immediately. You know, had we have gone through another agency, I don't know how fast they would be able to pull something like that together. So it's unique to Wisconsin. It's unique to our accounting rules. So we chose them because they understand that and they work closely with these agencies. So I don't know who the city does use. I really don't have any idea. If they even have anyone, I'm not sure.
You had mentioned in, I think it was the last meeting or the meeting before, about the fact that, you know, you were able to identify how much money we have held on to because some people have deferred not to pay their bills. Has that changed anything significantly in the last month or so? Or didn't you have a number on that last time as to like $20,000 or something that we didn't see payments on?
I would have to run another aging report right now to see how many, you're talking like people who haven't paid that are past due.
Yeah, that they're deferring their payments because of this.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a concrete number on that. I would have to run an aging report out of the utility billing software to see where that's at right now. But I can tell you that I haven't had any calls on it. And we do roll everything to the property taxes, and that's not changing this year. So unless it's a large business that could possibly go bankrupt soon, which we watch for commercial and industrial customers, you know, the little residential ones, we don't pay that much attention to because we're going to get our money one way or another with the tax roll process. But we can certainly run an aging report to see, I guess, where if the numbers look larger than they have before. But I have not run that report for July.
Yeah, you know, I was just curious as to whether or not that's growing or not, you know.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly look into that. We can run those reports and just see where it's at. But we haven't taken any phone calls about people. Initially, when COVID first started, a few customers called with concerns about not being able to pay. But now this last few months, we haven't had any of those calls that I'm aware of. Usually those type of calls come to me and I have not taken any. So I'm not aware of any customers who are concerned about being able to pay the bills recently here, but sure, I can run the aging reports and look into that for you.
Now, you said that temporary allowance is expiring next month. Do you
Yeah,
expect?
September 20th, the PSC put out an order saying that any debts incurred after July 15th will then customers will no longer, we would no longer have to eat the penalties for the customers, or they would be able to then pay the penalties that's going to be reinstated. So we've decided, because we're quarterly, and anybody who's billed at the end of July would be, their amounts are due August 20th, but that includes water usage prior to July 15th. So we're looking at anybody who's billed at the end of August, whose bills would be due September 20th. Those are the customers then that will start getting the penalties added back. So it's 1% per month for any unpaid balances. So that's how we came to that conclusion. So that order came out from the PSC.
Okay. Any concerns, people?
Nope.
Nope.
Engineering operations report?
Engineering, Jewel, we talked about already, that's ongoing. The dump station, that's for the vac truck to be able to dump material out. We're building a new concrete pad for that to happen at the office. That is out to bid. Bid opening is Friday for that one, so.
Hey, Brian, on that particular issue, or Mike, the dump station, are we going to allow the public to utilize that?
No,
And that's behind our gate, isn't it?
correct.
I'm just recalling issues, wasn't it South Milwaukee got into a bunch of problems because they were allowing the public to utilize their dumping, and they had contaminated, issues of some sort, and it got into the waste stream. And I just want to make sure we're not going to be having security issues with something like that.
No, this is behind our gate, and it'll be just for the utilities use.
All right, cool.
All right, what's the
Water
kind of dollar figure on cost of that?
We're doing a lot of the work ourselves. Darren's guys are going to be setting the tank and making the connection to the sanitary line. We are just having the bid for the concrete work and the steel reinforcing. So we're estimating that around 25,000.
I mean, are we gonna do what we're doing? That stuff out of the vac truck. We're using this for evaporation, or
Yes.
any environmental concerns with this, or is that generally considered clean material to begin with?
No. Once it's actually dried out, they scoop it up and throw it into the dumpster. So this is just an improvement of the system that we have in place already.
Okay.
So Water Master Plan, had discussion with them, and we are looking forward to having a draft version of the master plan here by the end of August. So it's getting wrapped up here. Sanitary Master Plan is ongoing. Currently, they're in the process of going through the sewer sheds and trying to realign these. A lot of these are old legacy sewer sheds that have never been changed as land has developed and parcels are changing hands. And so not only the city sewer sheds, but also MMSD sewer sheds, so that we can try and get this aligned properly. It's one of the big goals that want to get done with this. It's very tedious work and time consuming work that they're going through. Once Brown and Cockwell gets everything kind of straightened out, they're going to send it over to MMSD. We've already had discussions with them. They'll take a look and concur with what Brown and Cogwell has, or make changes themselves to the MMSD sewer sheds. So looking forward to that getting done.
Brian, any significant changes kind of come into mind already with the sewer shed, any capacity issues or new capacity that
No,
you see has been borne out?
no, this is all just cleanup of line work. Don't see any capacity issues changing in the sewer sheds. It's just now you have a property that's developed and you have a sewer shed that runs through the middle of something, and it's just cleaning up that line work.
Okay, cool, thanks.
I think what's important with this though is identifying all those capacity issues with the sub basins, et cetera, and that they're in the computer model for the sewage district so that the capacities for every one of these basins is current. Otherwise, we're limiting ourselves to any kind of future growth and development. So this is, it's not only beneficial for ourselves, it's hugely beneficial when it comes down to the sewage district. So they're approving any kind of forward plans we plan on doing.
And we've had discrepancies in our flow allocations that we have in these basins. So we're going to look at those as well and get those coordinated with the district. So good things coming.
Oh yeah, it goes all the way to sewer pack.
Brown Conwell also completed the assessments of the lift station as part of their sanitary master plan. That got pushed off due to COVID, but we were able to get out there and get that done. Distribution crews were out there helping and assisting with that assessment.
Yeah, there was an expenditure for that. And then the doorbell finally came on and recognized that that was a requirement with the EPA. I forget how much that expenditure was, but it wasn't coffee and donut money.
The risk and resiliency assessment has started as well. Strand is working on that. They went out and looked at all the facilities to get that process started, with the exception of the treatment plant. Due to COVID, they weren't allowed inside the treatment plant. Hopefully we can get in there sometime, but we'll wait and see how things go. They can still complete their report without accessing it. We'll work with them on getting that done. This is going to be a requirement every 5 years to complete this risk and resiliency assessment. So something new from the EPA. This is due the end of the year. So getting going on it so we can get that wrapped up. Rawson Avenue water looping project. That's connecting up the 2 dead ends along Rawson between basically the driving range and Rolling Meadows condos. PSI was out there, completed the soil borings this month, and Cedar Corp is working on the design. Weatherly, that design's getting wrapped up, and we'll be looking at sending that off to DNR, trying to get DNR permits here probably in the next month or so. Then I got a little show and tell for you. We had Glen Forest spot lining repair as part of one of the webinars we went to. Hammerhead Technologies, they do spot lining and repair work. They had a presentation trying to sell lining equipment to municipalities so they can take care of their issues like this themselves and do these spot liners. So out on Glen Forest Court, we had an issue where a sinkhole developed in the yard there. Andy went out, took a look at the sinkhole, put some dye in the sinkhole, and found out it started running through the fractures that were in this 15-inch clay pipe. So this was a prime candidate for Hammerhead to come out, and they did this work for free as a demo. So we had an on-site demo. And this is the equipment that they're using. This is what they're trying to sell to the utility. This item here is basically a packer. This one is from 12 to 15 inches that you can do sewer linings with. So this goes in. This is the guys taking the fiberglass lining and curing it with an epoxy liner. Then that gets folded up and wrapped onto the Packard, held on with zip ties. And you hear the zip ties pop as it expands out. They drop that down into the manhole. And let me make this a little bigger for you. So that's the Packard in place, and it's got to sit there for 2 hours. So it's a flow through packer. So you're not backing up any of the sewers. Just got to maintain the sewers. So we're able to have that in place as the liner cures. And then it's just an air bladder that puts pressure on that liner. And then they deflate that liner. And that's the finished product. So our crack in the pipe is sealed up and the infiltration is stopped from doing this work. So it was all a free demo. So a nice little add-on. It's roughly $2,500 to purchase that packer. And then it's about another $300 for each liner like this one to be installed. So something we can look at in the future of a possibility. We've done hired out Visasewer and other companies to do spot repair lining for us, but this might be an opportunity for us to save some money in the future to do this ourselves.
That seems to be a no-brainer, Brian. I don't know. Darren, what do you think about this?
I did talk to Andy about it a little bit. He was going to compile a list of how many places he feels like he'd be able to use this currently and just kind of take an inventory from there to see, you know, what direction he wants to go with it.
Brian or Darren, what's the manpower required kind of do this? Is this take a long time, or was this a one or two person job? Or
I would say probably 3 to make it easier. That's basically what they had out there. You know, it was the guy who was doing the demonstration, so there was some watching, but we had one guy down in the manhole, one guy feeding the bladder down to him, and then, you know, you had Andy that was kind of cameraing it. That's an optional step, but obviously for peace of mind, he definitely would like to camera it and see what's going on. But I'd say 2 to 3 people, and you're looking start to finish. I believe he said with the curing time, he's down to about 3 hours once you've been doing it.
Yeah.
and you got a feel for how many places like this in the city there are? Like,
I couldn't guess on that. Andy knows, he was on vacation for a couple of days here this past couple of weeks. And, you know, it's just something we were going to definitely look into. If I thought at one time he said a couple dozen. So, but
so this would be over and above our INI project with the MMSD. This is something we do just as we identify them with our cameraing, or?
Correct. Yeah. So it would be something like that. This one happened to be good timing because we came across this sinkhole probably about, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months ago. And Brian hit me up with this demo and asked if I knew it had any areas. So we took them. This was off the road a couple hundred feet. So you're 200 feet off the road. We didn't want to give them an easy one right in the middle of a, you know, quiet street or anything like that, to show them what it would be. And, you know, 15-inch pipe off the road. It worked out. It worked out pretty well. And I guess we'll see how it holds up a little bit here. Brian, you remember what the warranty was on that?
The liner's rated for 50-year warranty.
Okay.
So, and it's a structural lining that's going in there. We've used these in the past. What a lot of utilities are doing, larger utilities, is when their camera trucks are finding these, they have a separate group that goes out and can do this work right away. And they just add them to the list, and their whole jobs are going out and doing these repairs. We're not to that stage by any means, but this is something that definitely could be part of the camera crew. And when they come across these, they can go down a list, and we could do that in the future.
I like that.
Brian, I got a question though. How far can you go with that liner? Is it limited to 48 inches maximum, or can you go, 5-6 feet?
The liners that they sell are a maximum of 48 inches, and that is because the Packard itself is only that big.
Okay.
Now, there's different linings. We've lined sewer lines, you know, and you can do manhole to manhole on a sewer line with a new liner. But this is just a spot repair. So it's a fracture where you're seeing some infiltration and there's a damage in the pipe that you can take care of that right away ourselves. So be another little notch in the tool belt of things that we could do ourselves.
That sounds good.
And I don't think there's too much complaining about the guys about doing this work, other than Eric yelling as it's dripping down his arm as they're pulling it back out of the manhole. So,
Yeah.
the guy down in the hole definitely has the short end of the stick because you're trying to maneuver this packer down through the manhole and into the pipe. And when it's going in wet, it's covered in the epoxy. So you don't want to be hugging it and getting covered in that. And then coming out, it's a little damp, wrapped in plastic that's dripping on you as you're pushing it up the hill.
It's the most rewarding job though. But
Yes.
if I had to guess off the top of my head, we would probably want to start off with 2 packers, the one that goes up to 12-inch and then like the 12 to 15-inch. But that would all be based off of what Andy feels is, you know, needed, sized, and, you know, because the regulator and everything like that is the same no matter what size packer you get. So yeah, the biggest expense is the individual packer for whatever size pipe you need.
Yeah, and then there's the things that go with it too. There's, you know, the push rods and the regulators and the liners and this and that. That's all part of that package. So I think all in, you're looking at like $5,000 for one of these. My suggestion would be starting with the 8-inch, since 64% of our sanitary sewer is in the 8 to 10-inch range.
How long of a reach does this thing have?
You can pull it from manhole to manhole. So you can get 400 feet. It's a lot easier the closer. This one was about 10 feet from the manhole, so you're able to push that over. You are able to tie onto it and drag it through the line as well. So you can get there.
That's pretty cool. All
And they're a
right.
local company out of the Racine County area.
So
Yeah.
that was a nice little system. As far as development going on here, hold on here a second. I'll switch back over. So Highgate, they've been dealing with some soil issues out there. So pretty much the month of July, no work was happening out there. Trying to get their ponds dug and that northwest corner filled in so they can continue with the sewer and water construction up on that end. Ryan Road Business Park, waiting on punch list items to be completed out there. Orchard Hills and the Rawson Business Park are also waiting on punch list items. Hub 13, that's the apartment buildings just north of Highgate on 13th Street. Sanitary sewer is actually complete out there now. They still have testing and manholes to pour out there, but all the pipe is in the ground and they are working on the water main at this point. I imagine that Hub 13 will be completed before Highgate is completed, even though Highgate started first. Residents at Oakview, that's Mod Homes. The Howell and Elm water main connection was completed and didn't have any issues down there with the work being out in the road there. The water and sanitary is all completed. They're working on testing and punch list items out on that site. Post office still has some punch list items, but that water main is in operation. That tied us into Cudahy. I worked with Cudahy on that project as well. Jump ahead, the Creekside Crossing. That is the project south of IKEA. They're looking to get going on the sanitary work here probably in next few weeks. I got a pre-con coming up for that one to get that one off the ground. Then a couple smaller developments, Vision Group. They had a tie-in on water and sanitary lateral tie-in on 27th Street. That's the surgical center, south side of 27th Street. And then working with the high school on sanitary sewer easement. We're still waiting to get a hold harmless agreement with them. We'll need one with McDonald's as well. Melissa is working on the hold harmless agreement so we can get that language correct and get those signed and get those off to council. That's all I got.
Mr. Roby or Darren.
Yeah, I'll go because I got to talk about some more main breaks. So,
Shame on you.
so yeah, on July 9th, a couple of the guys coming into work noticed a little bit of water coming out of the curb right on Howell Avenue, just north of Groveland in our favorite area. So we started digging. Small leaks are the worst. Started coming down. Water was coming from the north still. Kept ripping a little bit, still coming from the north. We had a couple more feet to go before we hit a fiber crossing, so we decided to go up to the fiber crossing. Lo and behold, just about under the fiber crossing was where the water was coming up. And as Andy was probing with the probe rod, he let the geyser go and we had water flying all the way across Howell Avenue. So the little leak turned into a big leak just by knocking the crust off of the pipe. So that was a fun one. July 10th, got a call from Chuck, 5 something in the morning, that had a main break on 1116 East Marquette down by Clement. Little 6-inch pipe did quite the number to the road. It heaved about 25 feet of asphalt down there. So we don't get to do very many main breaks on 6-inch pipe anymore. So that was kind of a nice one for a change. July 14th, PPG called that they now had waterfront property because of a main break that was running across their front field, running to the east, just south of Rosina's farm there. That one, we worked with them. Leak came in around 3 o'clock. We asked them how much time they needed to get their crews out of there. They asked if they could have till 5 o'clock. They finally got their crews out of there at 5:30, and we had to clamp on by 7:30. That's how much that one was already excavated by itself, just from the amount of water on there. So yeah, in true fashion, those are the 3 for July. Didn't have to fix any laterals again. So there's a hydrant down on 32 in Oakwood that got hit by a utility vehicle, big accident down there, 3 cars involved going in the ditch. We had to dig that one up. That barrel broke down below again. Found another one broken during annual flushing. So during our hydrant or our valve operations this year, the operating crew turned a stem out of a valve on Forest Hill Avenue. So we had to dig that one up to get it back in. We couldn't go back in. It's another one of those valves that was circa 1993, kind of the same problem we've been having off Shepherd Avenue and Park Boulevard down there. We did rebuild another one of those valves proactively. It was a lot nicer doing it under our terms where we didn't have a lot of water coming out of the valve. Didn't have to shut anybody off on that one, replace the bolts, which were in very bad condition. So we kept going on sewer cleaning. Andy had to replace a seal on the high school parking lot, something with the addition they're doing back there. It was going to be in or alongside a sidewalk. So while they had it exposed, Andy did some chimney work, redid a seal over there. Brian talked about the Hammerhead demo already. We kept going with flushing. Still going on that, and started to do some restoration. We did end up doing a new sidewalk down at the treatment plant. The DPW crew was in the area. They saw what we were doing. They willingly offered us a hand, and it was a true blessing to get that sidewalk put down. And turned out good. I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't put it on my report here, but one of our summer interns here is going to talk about a little bit of sampling that she's been doing. I'm going to try to share my screen here. It just talks about some sampling and the water quality we have going through. So I'm going to turn my office over to her so she can kind of show you what she's been doing. She's got a couple minutes here, couple minute presentation, and we will see how it goes. Okay.
Did she bring the donuts?
Virtual donuts.
Can you see me?
I'll go out.
Can they see me?
Yes. So they should be able to see you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so can you guys see me?
Yes.
And can you see the screen too?
If you would, dear, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I will. I have a whole thing ready. Okay, so my name is Olivia Schomer, and I am one of the summer helpers this year for the distribution department. And I'm currently attending UWM, and I'm majoring in civil engineering with a concentration in water and environmental science. And this summer I've been doing a lot of ATP testing, which is why I'm here to talk to you today. So I have a little PowerPoint I've put together. Okay. So the first thing is, what is ATP testing is probably what you guys are all wondering. So ATP tests for microbiological bacteria in our water. It can be both good and bad bacterias. And we do that test through finding the ATP in the water. Now, a little background on ATP. ATP is basically the powerhouse of the cell. It provides the energy to the cells and allows them to move. So we do this by the ATP has a reaction with an enzyme called luciferase, and that produces light, and that's how we can count the number of ATP or the amount of ATP in the water. So now that you know what the testing is, I'll tell you why we're doing it. So we're doing it to be able to get more insight on the water quality in Oak Creek, because we already do the chlorine residuals tests on certain hydrants around the city. So now I've expanded and I've started doing the ATP tests on certain hydrants throughout the city. We have like hydrants that are specific ATP hydrants that I've been testing frequently throughout the city. And we're doing this to just find more ways to improve our water and find more ways to just make our water as best as we can possibly make it. So now I'll quick run through the process of how I do this test. It'll be I'll try and make it as quick and simple as possible, but it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to do each test, but I use a kit called Lumen Ultra, and it tests for the total microorganisms in the water, and it only takes a few minutes. So I start by taking the temperature of the hydrant water, and I test the chlorine in the water, because we're trying to see if there's a correlation between chlorine, temperature, and the amount of ATP. So I like to get all of those numbers down first. Then I use this little bottle here and collect some water. And I then pour the water into this syringe. Can you guys see everything I'm holding up? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So then I pour the water into here, and I would push it through here, through this filter down here. This little filter down here collects all of the organisms and bacteria that could possibly be in the water. And then I take a pipette full of, this is a pipette, we take a pipette full of Ultralice. This is a special chemical or material, I guess, used to get all of the bacteria off of this filter. So then I will push that through the syringe into this little bottle of solute. This little bottle of solute, the bacteria goes in, and it allows the bacteria to just float around in this little test tube with the solute in it. And then last but not least, I take a little bit of this solution that I've made and a little bit of this luminase that I have already pre-made beforehand, and I put them together in this little test tube. I then put it in the Photon Master, which is a little, I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen, but it's on the left side of the screen, and it's a little like machine that you, I guess, put the test tube in, and it counts the amount of ATP in the water. It counts the RLUs, which is the unit for ATP. So it counts the RLUs in the test tube, and then within 10 seconds, it spits out a number, which is your RLU number. That number, I then do a couple quick calculations, and I can get the amount of ATP in the water. Now, I used to have to do that all by hand, but Sally has made this wonderful app for me. So now I can just put it all into the app, and it does all the calculations for me, and it helps me keep better track of which hydrants I've already done. So then I have just 2 more slides left because I wanted to quick run through a few results. So some of the results I have are from Upper Chapel Hills, because that's typically an area where we have lower chlorine residuals. Mike has had me start testing up there, and I test up there a little more frequently because this is an area we really want to try using this on to see what's going on with the water up there. Why is our chlorine so low up there? So I've done a lot of tests on those hydrants up there. As you can see, the yellow column is the ATP column. Anything between 0 and 3 are fabulous numbers. If we could have the whole city have numbers between 0 and 3 for ATP, that would be outstanding. But obviously, no city's perfect. So anything between 3 and 7 is also okay. As we get above 7, that's when they turn into trouble numbers or numbers that we just would rather not be seeing. So as you can see, I've made those red. We don't really know why they're red because it doesn't really necessarily correlate with low chlorine. It doesn't really correlate with temperature. We're still trying to figure that out. One way we've talked about possibly trying to make these numbers get a little lower is maybe flushing the hydrants more often to get the flow of water going better through the pipes to eliminate some of these microorganisms. Okay, last but not least, I have a heat map. So Sally has helped me create this heat map. This is just from my round 1 testing. I'm currently working on round 2 testing. And as you can see, the red, orange, and yellow areas are areas that have a little bit higher ATP that we want to try and get lower down into like the dark blue and light blues. So these heat maps will be able to see more what we want them to be looking like once I do 2 to 3 tests. But I'm currently working on my second round. So that'll be in a couple months. But yeah. Yeah, thank you for listening. Do you guys have any questions?
Dear, maybe I missed it. What does ATP stand for?
Adenosine triphosphate. It's the adenosine triphosphate is like a long term. Everyone in science just shortens it to ATP, and it's basically just the energy a cell has. Any living cell has ATP.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know what to do now. I will just go find Darren. Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
So this is that test equipment, that Lumen Ultra equipment we bought middle of last year, earlier last year. We've tried it out a couple of times. It didn't get great results. At that time, we weren't tying temperature to the test result. So we found that was going to be important. We wanted to assign one of our summer helpers to do it this year so that we'd have someone that could really be focused on it and go out and blanket the city so we can start determining what is a good number, what is a bad number. Do we have problem areas or areas we want to address? And that map's able to do that for us. So we'll continue to go through the city to develop better and better information as to where we want to concentrate our efforts on improving water quality.
Cool. He's back.
All right, that's all I had for my report.
Okay, sir, as I'm thinking about it, as I look at your goals on the last page, Darren.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Clearly, some of these are going to be significantly impacted because of the pandemic and how we've had to reassess, our crews out there.
Yep.
Instead of turning around and showing that we're missing our goals, should we turn around and update this goal? Maybe the original goal might have been fine if nothing else was going on, but based on what we're currently experiencing, maybe you should revise those goals to something that's more reasonable based on current conditions. And then just add that, leave your original target there, but then underneath it or alongside of it, put down the new goal in parentheses or something, or vice versa, okay?
Yeah, we could do something along there. Andy's starting to accept the fact that he's not going to get caught up. He was hopeful last month, and it's probably not going to happen. He has started to accept that, which is very hard for him.
Well, it's just, it is what it is. So there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to miss out on, but that's to be expected. So keep charging.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you. Mr. Roby.
You are muted, Mike. I don't know if you knew that.
Hey, Mike, can you hear us?
Probably, but
Well, if I look at the plant report, I don't see anything out of the norm there. Yearly pumpage is up 1.03%. So seems like we're doing okay there. Any
Yeah.
concern?
No, there's little, month changes, little percentages up and down, and they're really relatively minor. And this particular report, we didn't have the data to fill in the 5-year percentage, but it's kind of the trend that we've seen before. It's a little bit more green compared to the 5-year.
But everything looks kind of status quo from that perspective. Which leads me to manager's report.
I actually don't have anything to add this month. We had quite a bit going on and talked about a lot of stuff. So that's, nothing new.
Okay, guys, any other concerns out there? Get a
Nothing
motion.
here.
Get a motion to adjourn.
Super moves for adjournment.
Willie seconds.
Sigali second.
Roll call.
Seifert, aye.
Aye.
Yella.
Sigali, aye.
Richards, aye. See you in church. Ciao.